Imagine, just for a second, that you are someone who has always played by the rules.
Right, like a totally upstanding citizen.
Exactly. You pay your taxes, you go to work, you have never, ever touched an illicit drug in your life.
Hmm.
But you are also dealing with something just unbearable. Maybe it's chronic physical pain, like cluster headaches.
Ouch. Yeah, those are awful.
Or maybe it's this deep treatment-resistant depression that, traditional medicine just hasn't been able to touch at all.
Right. Nothing works.
Right. And then one day you hear a whisper about a taboo underground treatment, like a treatment that requires you to step completely outside the law.
Wow.
So the question is, would you become a criminal just to feel normal again?
I mean, it is a really profound dilemma for anyone to face, We are so deeply conditioned to view the line between medicine and illegal drugs as this absolute impenetrable wall.
Right, a hard line.
Exactly. But when sheer desperation enters the picture and all those traditional avenues have just failed, that wall starts to look, well, a lot more like a permeable membrane.
Yeah, and that blurry, permeable line is exactly where we are heading today. Welcome to today's deep dive into the source material.
So glad to be doing this one.
Our mission today is to unpack this really fascinating sociological study. It's titled The Processual Path, a dynamic model of psychedelic microdosing by Jason Hughes and his colleagues.
And just to set the stage here, this isn't some pharmacological study looking at brain scans in a sterile lab.
Right, no petri dishes today.
No, exactly. This is an in-depth, interview-based study of 23 actual individuals. We're talking about bank managers, stonemasons, nurses, IT workers.
Just regular people.
Yeah, regular people who are using subhallucinogenic doses of psychedelics, things like psilocybin mushrooms and LSD, basically to treat themselves.
Which is such an important distinction to make right at the top. We are looking at complex human behavior here. We're examining how an ordinary person fundamentally transforms their entire relationship with a forbidden substance over time.
What's fascinating here is how completely this study challenges our standard cultural view of drug use.
Oh, totally.
I mean, when we think of psychedelics, we often think of the 1960s counterculture, right? Timothy Leary telling people to tune in, turn on, and drop out.
Right, the whole tie-dye Woodstock vibe.
Exactly. But these participants aren't looking to escape reality or get high. They are actually trying to do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
They're using these substances to drop into their normal lives. They want to be better parents, better workers, to just function in society without crippling anxiety or pain holding them back.
Okay, let's unpack this journey, because we are going to trace the exact progression of a person using microdosing for self-therapy or medical relief.
From start to finish.
Yeah, we'll explore how you move from that initial, often very hesitant discovery all the way to stabilizing a long-term practice.
Right.
And most importantly, we're going to look at how these users shift from looking for an immediate short-term effect to cultivating a lasting, permanent life benefit.
Which is a huge shift.
It really is. So how does an ordinary accountant or nurse even begin this process? Because before anyone can take a microdose, they have to, discover it even exists.
Yeah, and then they have to convince themselves it's actually worth the risk.
Exactly. Because, as the study points out, nobody here is starting this just for weekend recreation. People arrive at this practice either through a sort of extreme self-improvement path.
Like James, right?
Yeah, James.
Yeah.
The 35-year-old writer in the study, he found it through personal development podcasts and audiobooks. So there's that path. Or they are acting out of pure, unadulterated desperation.
And because these are mostly ordinary people, many of whom have literally never used an illicit substance, they can't just start taking highly illegal drugs without experiencing massive cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They have to engage in what the researchers brilliantly term stigma work.
Stigma work. So they aren't just changing their daily habits. They literally have to rewrite their own internal moral code.
Basically, yeah.
How do you even do that without feeling like a total hypocrite?
I mean, it takes an incredible amount of mental gymnastics and rationalization. They have to actively reframe their actions to themselves so they don't feel like, drug abusers or deviants.
Right.
There is this remarkably powerful quote in the research from Kate. She's a 49-year-old participant.
Oh, I remember this one.
Yeah, she was just so desperate to try something, anything, for her family's sake, to just be a present mother. So she justified the criminal risk by telling herself it was a choice between being legally dead or illegally alive.
Wow. Legally dead or illegally alive. That just, it hits you right in the chest.
It really does.
You don't want to break the law. You just want to survive. I mean, it's like deciding to become a smuggler just to get your asthma medication.
That's a great analogy, actually.
But let me push back on this whole discovery process for a second.
Sure.
If the medical establishment hasn't fully approved this, and it's still, largely illegal, aren't these people essentially just trusting random Reddit users and internet podcasters with their brain chemistry? I mean, that seems incredibly reckless.
Well, yeah, and that is exactly why this initial research and reframing period is so intense and exhausting for them.
Oh, so they're not just taking it lightly?
Not at all. They aren't just blindly swallowing pills based on a single internet comment. They are navigating this incredibly complex and often contradictory landscape of modern information.
It's a lot to sift through.
It is. On one hand, you have the intense hype from internet influencers making it sound like a flawless miracle cure. And on the other hand, you have the very real fear of physical harm, psychological breaks, or, criminal arrest.
So they basically have to become their own researchers.
They do. They have to sift through this mountain of data, trying to separate genuine medical hope from exaggerated internet claims.
Right.
They read the actual clinical trials happening at major universities like Johns Hopkins, but they also scour anonymous online forums to find anecdotal reports from people who sound legitimate and relatable.
So much work.
It's a massive amount of cognitive labor just to give themselves permission to try it.
Okay, so they've done the research, and they've convinced themselves to cross this moral line. They tell themselves, yes, I am going to do this.
Right, they're committed.
But then there's a sudden, jarring reality check. I mean, you can't just pick this stuff up at your local pharmacy. How does an ordinary person suddenly navigate the criminal underworld?
Yeah, that practical hurdle pushes them straight into the gray market. And as you can imagine, this is incredibly stressful for someone who isn't used to dealing with illicit supply chains or criminal networks.
Oh, the stories in the study about this are wild. Like, people talk about getting scammed using cryptocurrency on social media platforms.
Oh, yeah, it happens all the time.
Someone asks for payment up front, then demands more money for fake customs issues, and then just vanishes into the ether.
It's brutal.
Yeah, one participant, Andrew, a bathroom fitter, talked about losing money and how unbelievably steep the learning curve was. So, to avoid the black market, a lot of them try to navigate legal loopholes instead.
Right, the whole do-it-yourself route.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They figure out that they can legally buy mushroom spores from one website because the spores themselves don't contain the illegal compound yet.
Right, the spores are perfectly legal.
Yeah, and then they buy a separate legal grow bag from another website. These are sometimes called inject and forget bags. And suddenly, these ordinary citizens are turning their bedroom closets into amateur mycology labs to cultivate their own supply at home.
I mean, it highlights the extreme lengths people will go to for relief. And for those who don't have the time or space to grow their own, the realities of the international postal system come into play.
Oh, right, the mail.
Yeah, there is a great anecdote in the source material from a 39-year-old psychotherapist named Arian Wynn.
Oh, I loved her story.
It's so good. She ordered magic truffles imported from the Netherlands, where they are legal, and she described this totally surreal, slightly seedy experience of her regular everyday mail carrier casually walking up her front path and handing her a padded envelope full of Schedule I highly illegal drugs.
She called the whole situation absurd, and it really is. I mean, the irony here for you, the listener, is just so thick. Think about it.
Yeah.
These people are seeking a Zen therapeutic mental state. They're trying to cure their debilitating anxiety.
Yeah.
But to get their medicine, they have to endure the massive, heart-pounding paranoia of potential federal customs seizures.
Totally counterproductive.
Right. Imagine the paranoia Andrew felt. You're trying to cure your panic attacks, and now you're sweating every time the mail carrier walks up your driveway. Because one guy in the study actually got a formal warning letter from the government after his package was intercepted. You'd be terrified, right?
It perfectly illustrates the profound tension between the therapeutic need to heal and the rigid illegality of the substance. They are forced into this highly anxiety-inducing position just to access what they see as healthcare.
But let's say they run the gauntlet. The package actually arrives safely, or the closet mushrooms finally fruit and they harvest them. Now what?
Now the real work begins.
Because, again, this isn't a standardized pill pumped out of a massive regulated pharmaceutical factory. You're dealing with dried fungi where the chemical potency varies wildly from stem to cap. and from batch to batch.
Exactly. And this brings us to a really messy trial and error phase of figuring out the dosage. And sociologically, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where we see a crucial shift in behavior.
Okay, what kind of shift?
It's the shift from seeking effects to seeking benefits.
Huh. What's the difference between an effect and a benefit in this context?
Well, in traditional recreational drug use, people seek an immediate, noticeable effect. They want the trip, the visual hallucinations, the intoxications, the high.
Or you'll read the fireworks.
Exactly. But here, the users are actively hunting for what's called a subperceptual dose, a dose so small that they don't feel intoxicated at all.
That sounds tricky to get right.
It is. Very often, because of that varying potency you mentioned, they'll accidentally take a little too much initially, feel a mild trip coming on, and then intentionally dial it back for their next dose to find that invisible sweet spot.
Yeah, Andrew, the bathroom tutor we mentioned earlier, had a great quote about this. He said, you're actually getting a lift in mood. You don't want to trip. You don't want to see flashing lights. That's not what it's all about.
Precisely.
But I have to stop and ask the critical question here, the one I'm sure you are wondering about as you listen to this. Is this all just a massive placebo effect?
Ah, the placebo question.
I mean, if you are taking a dose so small that you literally cannot feel it, and you are desperately financially and legally invested in hoping it cures your lifelong depression, aren't you just tricking your own brain?
It is the most common and arguably the most valid criticism of microdosing. And the researchers address it brilliantly in the study.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they acknowledge the placebo question head on, but they argue that fixating purely on whether it's a chemical reaction or a placebo might actually be missing the entire point of how this practice works in the real world.
But hold on, if the journaling and the meditation and the placebo hope are doing all the heavy lifting, why break the law at all? Couldn't they just journal without the mushrooms and get the same result?
That is the core debate.
Right.
But the users in the study and the researchers observing them suggest that the substance acts as a necessary catalyst. Think of it like WD-40 for the brain.
WD-40, okay, I like this.
Yeah. If you have a rusty, stuck door hinge, which we can compare to the rigid, looping negative thoughts of depression or anxiety, spraying WD-40 on it doesn't magically fix the door on its own. Right. You still have to grab the handle and swing the door back and forth to work the oil in and break the rust.
Ah, I see. So the microdose is the WD-40. It loosens the rigid neural pathways, what neuroscientists sometimes call the default mode network. But the active work, the journaling and therapy, is the swinging of the door.
Precisely. Microdosing for these individuals involves deep active work. It's an entirely different paradigm from how we normally view medication.
How so?
Well, when you take a traditional prescription antidepressant from your doctor, the expectation is mostly passive, right? You swallow the pill and you wait for the chemical to fix your serotonin levels.
Yeah, you just wait for it to kick in.
Microdosers don't do that. They track their moods meticulously in spreadsheets. They journal every single morning. They actively reflect on their past trauma.
They're really putting in the effort.
They are. James, the will writer, explicitly noted this. He said, it's not just take a pill, it's all the other things.
The active investment.
Yes. The researchers suggest that this full array of material practices, the self-reflection, the tracking, the lifestyle changes enabled by the slight loosening of that mental rust, is a core part of the therapeutic journey.
So it's not just the drug.
No, the substance and the psychological work are deeply intertwined.
Okay, so they've figured out their dose, they've dialed it back, and they're doing the heavy psychological lifting. What happens next? Because eventually it has to stop being this crazy, terrifying, illegal experiment and just become, regular life, right?
Yeah, that is the phase of independence and incorporation. Once a user survives all that initial trial and error, the practice loses its novelty.
That makes sense.
A key marker of this transition is that they start shifting their attention away from the internet.
Because early on, they are basically living on Reddit, right?
Exactly. In the beginning, these users are terrified of doing it wrong, so they rigidly follow strict regimens they find online.
Like schedules and stuff?
Yeah. For instance, they might follow the Fadiman schedule, created by researcher James Fadiman, which dictates taking a microdose on day 1 and then taking 2 full days off to prevent the body from building a chemical tolerance.
Oh, yeah.
Or they might follow the Stamets protocol, named after mycologist Paul Stamets, which involves stacking the psilocybin with other over-the-counter supplements like niacin and lion's mane mushroom for 4 days on, followed by 3 days off.
It's very rigid, very controlled.
But as they move into this incorporation phase, they gain independence. They stop relying on the online gurus and the strict mathematical schedules. They start relying much more on their own intuition, taking it only when it feels right for their own unique biology.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Sometimes this incorporation into daily life actually means taking incredibly long breaks from the substance.
Which is fascinating.
It really is, because it's the complete opposite of how we usually understand illicit drug use. With addictive drugs, use escalates. You need more of it, more often, just to feel okay or stave off withdrawal.
Right, the classic addiction model.
But microdosers often have protracted periods of non-use, sometimes weeks or months where they don't take anything at all. It's treated more like a daily vitamin or a supplement. Like if you forget to take your vitamin C for a few days, you don't go into physical withdrawals, you don't panic, you just treat it as part of a broader, holistic wellness picture.
And we see this dynamic clearly in the case of Lucy, a 45-year-old life coach in the study. She used microdosing specifically to transition off her SSRIs.
And just for clarity, SSRIs are the standard daily prescription antidepressants like Lexapro or Zoloft.
Correct. Lucy wanted to get off her daily pharmaceutical antidepressants, so she carefully alternated her days. A day with a microdose, a day with nothing to enjoy what users call the afterglow effect,
Oh, nice.
and a day with her SSRI. Over time, as she worked through her internal issues, she realized she felt so emotionally stable that she simply kept up with the microdosing schedule and forgot to take the traditional medication.
Wow, she just forgot it.
Yeah. Eventually, she just stopped the SSRIs entirely. The microdosing and the psychological work she did alongside it gave her the baseline stability to break away from daily pharmaceutical dependency.
It's incredible. And this new stability doesn't just stay in a vacuum. It bleeds out into everything else they do,
Wow.
which brings us to the final and maybe the most profound part of this journey, the ripple effect.
Ah, yeah.
Because this integration into daily life eventually transforms the user's broader relationship with the entire world. They don't just feel less sad or in less pain. Their whole perspective on life shifts.
Sociologically, the researchers describe psychedelics in this specific context as acting as civilizing technologies.
Okay, civilizing technologies, that sounds very academic. How does that actually play out in a normal person's life?
Well, it means we have to reframe how we view these substances. They aren't being used as tools for deviance or for escaping societal norms. They are being used as tools to enhance one's ability to successfully participate in civilization. Because the microdose helps break those habitual negative loops in the brain, the user suddenly has the emotional bandwidth to improve their empathy.
Yeah.
They have the energy to enhance their work performance, to connect on a deeper level with their family, and to manage their health within the bounds of society. It's the profound reframing of a drug from an agent of chaos to an agent of order and social connection.
And you see this so clearly in how their everyday lives expand.
Yeah.
They don't usually move on to taking massive, heavy doses of psychedelics to go see aliens in the woods.
No, not at all.
Instead, their normal lives just get bigger and richer.
Yeah.
Take Carol, a 51-year-old nurse in the study. She started microdosing for her own mental health, and suddenly she found herself willing to try freezing plunge pools with her friend.
Plunge pools, wow.
Something she never would have had the adventurous spirit for before. She started spending her free time voluntarily visiting lonely, elderly people in her community just to help out and connect.
That's beautiful.
She started seeking out fresh air, prioritizing better nutrition, and exercising. The microdosing was just the catalyst. It sparked this total, holistic lifestyle expansion.
It opens up a wider gamut of potential life experiences, and there is a beautiful cyclical nature to this final phase of the journey. Remember how these users started?
Scared and confused on the internet.
Exactly. Desperate, scared, scouring anonymous forums for any shred of guidance. Well, once they reach this stage of stability and expansion, they almost always return the favor.
They go back to the internet.
They do. They become the seasoned veterans on the forums. They write the detailed guides for the next generation. They advocate for the practice safely, and they spend their time assuring the terrified newcomers that they aren't crazy, that they aren't alone, and that there is hope.
Wow.
As Leah, a hotel manager in the study, put it, you develop this profound feeling of we're all in this together.
When you step back and look at the irony of all this, it's really something. We're talking about individuals who are breaking federal laws, engaging in illicit black markets, and consuming forbidden substances.
Right.
All with the ultimate goal of becoming better neighbors, more present parents, and healthier, more productive citizens. They're breaking the rules specifically so they can conform to the ideals of a healthy society.
It is a fascinating paradox, and the most crucial takeaway from our listening to this is to recognize that microdosing, at least as modeled in the sociological research, is less about the passive pharmacological action of a chemical hitting a receptor in the brain.
Hmm.
It is vastly more about the rigorous, highly intentional work the user puts in. It is that active investment, the daily journaling, the moral reframing, the lifestyle adjustments, the community building that actually converts transient, fleeting chemical effects into permanent, life-altering benefits.
So what does this all mean? We've tracked how an individual transforms from a desperate patient navigating sketchy online forums and the fear of criminality into an independent practitioner who uses a precise, self-tailored microdose as just one tool in a larger toolkit for lasting well-being.
This raises an important question, one that the researchers leave us grappling with at the end of the study.
What's that?
Our society is completely obsessed with the binary label of drug user versus non-user. We draw a hard, dark line between the two, assuming one is bad and the other is good.
Yeah, always.
But if a substance is utilized entirely to make someone a better, healthier, and more engaged citizen, and if that practice sometimes involves long periods of not taking the substance at all, does the word drug, with all its negative cultural baggage, even apply anymore?
That's a great point.
Or are we actually looking at the very beginning of the future of customized, self-directed mental health care?
That is the exact tension we started with. We have to ask ourselves whether our rigid definitions are serving us or if they are preventing people from finding genuine relief.
Imagine being that rule follower we talked about at the very beginning, hearing that whisper about a taboo treatment.
Yeah, that choice. We started by asking if you would break the law to feel normal. But maybe the real question is, if breaking the law is the only way a person can truly heal and become whole again, maybe it's the definition of the law and our strict definition of what counts as medicine that actually needs to be fixed.
Something to really think about.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Keep questioning the world around you, and we'll catch you next time.